Without hesitation, the group set off towards the sound, their hearts pounding with fear and anticipation. As they made their way down into the valley, the cry for help grew louder, and they knew they were getting close. But as they rounded a bend in the trail, they were met with a sight that made their blood run cold. There, in the center of the valley, was Emily. But she was not alone. Standing next to her, its eyes glowing with an otherworldly light, was a creature unlike any they had ever seen. It was tall and imposing, with skin that seemed to shift and writhe like a living thing. The group froze in terror, unsure of what to do. And then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the creature vanished, leaving Emily standing alone in the valley. The sun was just starting to rise over the blue mountains of Australia, casting a warm, golden light over the rugged landscape. The air was crisp and clean, filled with the scent of eucalyptus and the distant call of kookaburras. A group of 8 friends, all experienced hikers, gathered at the trailhead, eager to start their adventure. They had been planning this trip for months and were excited to explore the beautiful scenery and challenging trails of the Blue Mountains. The group was led by Alex, a seasoned hiker and outdoorsman who had spent countless hours exploring the mountains. He was joined by his girlfriend, Sarah, as well as their friends, Emily, Matt, Jack, Rachel, Chris, and Ben. As they set off, the group was in high spirits, chatting and laughing as they made their way along the winding trail. The scenery was breathtaking, with towering cliffs, sparkling waterfalls, and picturesque valleys stretching out as far as the eye could see. The group hiked for several hours, taking regular breaks to rest and refuel. As the day wore on, the sun beat down on them, making the air hot and humid, but they pressed on, determined to reach their campsite before nightfall. As the afternoon wore on, the group began to spread out, with some members hiking ahead while others lagged behind. Alex, who had been leading the group, stopped to wait for the stragglers, but as he looked back, he realized that one of their members was missing. "Has anyone seen Emily?" Alex called out, but there was no response. The group quickly gathered around Alex, concern etched on their faces. They frantically scanned the surrounding area, but there was no sign of Emily. "Don't worry, she's probably just lagging behind," Sarah said, trying to reassure the group. "Let's wait for a bit and see if she catches up." But as the minutes ticked by, there was still no sign of Emily. The group began to get anxious, and Alex decided to send out a search party to look for her. Matt and Jack volunteered to go back and search for Emily, while the rest of the group continued on to the campsite. As they waited, the atmosphere grew more tense, and the group couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. As night began to fall, the group arrived at the campsite, exhausted and worried. They set up their tents and started a fire, but the mood was somber. As they sat around the fire, trying to rest and recharge, they heard a strange noise in the distance. At first, they thought it might be Emily, but as the noise grew louder, they realized it was something else entirely. The group exchanged nervous glances, unsure of what to make of the strange noise. As they listened, the sound grew louder and closer, until it sounded like something was moving through the underbrush, heading straight for their campsite. Suddenly, the noise stopped, and an eerie silence fell over the group. They waited with bated breath, wondering what would happen next. And then, out of the darkness, a figure emerged. But to the group's horror, it wasn't Emily. It was Matt, one of the members of the search party, and he looked like he had seen a ghost. "What's wrong?" Alex asked, rushing to Matt's side. Matt's eyes were wide with fear. "I saw something," he whispered. "Something that can't be explained." As the group gathered around Matt, trying to get him to explain what he had seen, they realized that Jack was missing. The search party had consisted of 2 people, but only one had returned. The group's anxiety turned to panic as they realized that they were now missing 2 members. They frantically searched the surrounding area, but there was no sign of either Emily or Jack. As the night wore on, the group grew more and more desperate. They knew they had to find their missing friends, but they had no idea where to start. And then, just as they were starting to lose hope, they heard a faint cry for help. It was a woman's voice, and it sounded like it was coming from a nearby valley. Without hesitation, the group set off towards the sound, their hearts pounding with fear and anticipation. As they made their way down into the valley, the cry for help grew louder, and they knew they were getting close. But as they rounded a bend in the trail, they were met with a sight that made their blood run cold. There, in the center of the valley, was Emily. But she was not alone. Standing next to her, its eyes glowing with an otherworldly light, was a creature unlike any they had ever seen. It was tall and imposing, with skin that seemed to shift and writhe like a living thing. The group froze in terror, unsure of what to do. And then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the creature vanished, leaving Emily standing alone in the valley. The group rushed to her side, relief washing over them as they saw that she was unharmed. "What happened?" Alex asked, shaking his head in confusion. Emily looked up at them, her eyes wide with fear. "I don't know," she said. "I was hiking along, and then I saw this thing. It was watching me, and I knew I had to get away. But it was too fast. It caught up to me, and Emily's voice trailed off, and she looked away, unable to continue. The group exchanged nervous glances, unsure of what to make of Emily's story. They knew that they had to get out of there, but they were also determined to find Jack and make sure he was safe. As they made their way back up the mountain, they couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. They kept looking over their shoulders, expecting to see the creature lurking in the shadows. But as the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the landscape, they saw nothing but the trees and the rocks. They set up camp for the night, huddling together around the fire as they tried to make sense of what had happened. "I don't know what that thing was," Emily said, her voice barely above a whisper, "but I know it wasn't human." The group nodded in agreement, their faces lit only by the flickering flames. As they sat there trying to calm their nerves, they heard a faint rustling in the underbrush. It was a soft sound, but it was enough to make them all jump. What was that? Sarah asked, her eyes wide with fear. Alex stood up, his eyes scanning the darkness. I don't know, he said, but I'm going to go find out. As Alex walked off into the darkness, the group waited anxiously behind him. They knew that they had to be careful, that they couldn't let their guard down for a second. But as they waited, they couldn't shake the feeling that they were being stalked, that something was out there watching them, waiting for its chance to strike. And then, just as they were starting to relax, they heard a loud crash from the direction Alex had gone. It was followed by a faint cry for help. The group exchanged nervous glances, their hearts racing with fear. They knew that they had to act fast, that they couldn't leave Alex to fend for himself. Without hesitation, they set off into the darkness, determined to find Alex and make sure he was safe. But as they walked, they couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap, that thing was waiting for them just out of sight. And then, just as they were starting to lose hope, they saw a figure stumbling towards them. It was Alex, his face pale. What happened? Sarah asked, rushing to his side. Alex looked up at them, his eyes haunted. I saw it, he said. I saw the creature, and it's not just a creature. It's something much, much worse. As Alex's words hung in the air, the group knew that they were in grave danger. They knew that they had to leave as fast as possible. But as they turned to leave, they realized that they were lost. The darkness seemed to stretch on forever, and they had no idea which direction to go. They were trapped, alone and defenseless, in the middle of nowhere. And then, just as they were starting to lose hope, the bush rusted again. This time it was a soft sound, but it was enough to make them all jump. What was that? Emily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. As they waited for an answer, the rustling grew louder, and the group knew that they were not alone. Something was out there, watching them, waiting for its chance to strike. And as they waited defenselessly for whatever it was to appear, Jack emerged, the missing member of their group. But as they rushed to greet him, they realized that something was wrong. Jack's eyes were black as coal, and his skin was deathly pale. Jack, what's wrong? Alex asked, his voice shaking with fear. But Jack didn't respond. Instead, he just kept walking towards them, his eyes fixed on them with an unnerving intensity. As the group watched in horror, Jack's body began to contort and twist, his limbs elongating and his skin stretching like rubber. And then, just as they were about to scream, Jack's body burst open, revealing a mass of writhing, pulsing tendrils. The group stumbled backward, tripping over each other in their haste to get away. As they watched, the tendrils began to move, slithering across the ground like snakes. And then everything went black. When the group came to, they were lying on the ground, their heads throbbing with pain. They slowly sat up, looking around in confusion. Where are we? Sarah asked, rubbing her head. I don't know, Alex replied, looking around. But I think we're still in the mountains. As they struggled to their feet, they saw that they were surrounded by a dense forest. The trees towered above them, casting long, ominous shadows on the ground. Which way do we go? Emily asked, looking around nervously. I don't know, Alex admitted, but we need to get out of here. We need to find help. As they started walking, they heard a strange noise behind them. It sounded like footsteps, but they were light and cautious, as if someone was trying not to be heard. The group spun around, but they saw nothing. The noise stopped, and an eerie silence fell over the forest. "What was that?" Sarah whispered. "I don't know," Alex replied, his eyes scanning the trees. "But I think we're being followed." As they continued walking, the group heard the noise again. This time, it was louder and closer. They spun around, but again, they saw nothing. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the trees. It was Jack, or at least it was something that looked like Jack. His eyes were still black as coal, and his skin was still deathly pale. But this time he was different. He was standing upright, and his body seemed to be shifting. His limbs were stretching and contorting like rubber. The group froze in terror, unsure of what to do. Jack, or the thing that was pretending to be Jack, started walking towards them. As he got closer, the group saw that his face was changing. His features were melting away like wax in a furnace. "Run!" Alex yelled, grabbing Sarah's hand. The group turned and sprinted through the forest, not stopping until they were sure they had left the thing behind. As they caught their breath, they looked at each other in shock. "What just happened?" Emily asked, her voice shaking. "I don't know," Alex replied, "but I think we just saw something that can't be explained." The group nodded in agreement, still trying to process what they had just seen. As they continued walking, they stumbled upon a small cabin in the woods. It was old and weathered, but it looked like it had been recently occupied. "Let's go inside," Sarah suggested. "Maybe we can find some help." The door wasn't locked, so they cautiously entered the cabin. Inside, they found a small room with a fireplace and a table. There was a piece of paper on the table with a note scrawled on it. "Welcome to the Blue Mountains," the note read. "You'll never leave." The group exchanged nervous glances, unsure of what to make of the ominous message. And then they heard a noise outside. It sounded like footsteps, heavy and deliberate. The group froze, their hearts pounding in their chests. "What's coming for us?" Emily whispered. As they waited in terror, the footsteps got closer and closer, until they could feel the vibrations of each step through the creaking wooden floorboards. And then, everything went silent.